Hello everybody, it's Ben. Welcome to the Bonny Rackham. We're on episode 3 of season 4. Big episode to go over today. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get straight into it.
Get us underway.
So yeah, this one obviously has to be called Killhauled, you know, not only for the horrific act itself that's inflicted upon Teach here, but also because the term is sometimes used in modern language, usually in the sense of someone being severely rebuked or kind of plans being absolutely wrecked. So I can sort of tie it into Barranger's fate as well in this one. But yeah, it's a simple, to the point, one-word title for this one that seems to serve it quite well. Okay, let's get into a brief summary and a rating.
First item.
So this one is written by Jonathan E. Steinberg and Brad Caleb Kane, and is directed by, and we have a new name at this late stage, wasn't expecting that, we have Roll Rain. And so after a couple of setting the season up, getting the players into position sort of episodes, the pace, the intensity just absolutely amps up on this one. Now alone in charge of Nassau security, Barranger is free to interrogate Max, but due to Eleanor's forced change of plans, she is, for the first time in a while, in the right place at the right time. But she is still getting nowhere with Barranger. Flint and Madi discuss the fallout with Billy from the night before, and Emmy has some good news to share. Silver is reunited with both partners, and a call to arms is made, and a showdown of epic proportions takes place. Meanwhile, the Revenge Avengers catch up to Woods Rogers' ship, but underestimate the lengths he's willing to go. A monster is finally revealed in Woods Rogers. A monster is slain in Barranger. And despite horrific torture, a historic and in-show legend smiles in defiance and in the face of death. It's a really nice jump up in terms of ratings. While I do still have a couple of little niggles to kind of go over with this one, it's still a very strong episode. So I'm going to go, for a very high 9.5 rating for this one. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into this one.
Next item.
Okay, so yeah, let's start with Nassau today and then finish with the Revenge Avengers and Woods Rogers. So let's do Max, Barranger and Eleanor, then Flint, Silver and Co, and that final showdown. So we start the episode with Barranger, a character I'm quite glad only gets quite a short run. Very dislikable for me, and this little moment of trying to humanise him while he sort of fondles with a family locket, it doesn't do it for me, I'm afraid. It's clearly been established, he doesn't have to be there, he chose to be, he chose to continue this cycle of violence, he chooses to keep his plans to arrest Max from Woods Rogers, he keeps that to himself. He doesn't take any of the advice given to him by Eleanor in this episode. Yeah, other than kind of going over his plot, that's about as much as I really deepen this guy and this character. So yeah, we'll come back to his scene with Woods Rogers in a little bit. So we get a very quick little scene where Eleanor's set to sail, but is informed the men who were set to escort her are needed elsewhere, so it will have to be delayed for now. There's a little moment with Mrs. Hudson where she informs Eleanor she's not been contacted by Grundle in weeks, so asks if she might be released so she can go home. So obviously, with these delays, that will be a disappointment to her too now. So we wonder, how come there's not enough men to escort her back? Bloody Barranger. That's why. So on to Max, and Max and Eleanor are going to sort of share their time a little bit. So we see her in bed with a random, possibly Georgia, but we don't see the girl's face. They're sleeping top to toe as well, which is interesting. Could be Max is still taking Mapleton's advice here, take your pleasure when you need to, but no feelings, so she's kind of sleeping top to toe. No risk of a half asleep cuddle, waking up in each other's arms. So Max is sort of deep in 4 as she's laying there. As discussed, she's really in over her head at the moment. She's not on good standings with either side right now. At this point, a bunch of redcoats come barging in, and I hate this for Max, this invasion of privacy, this fear that they're kind of installing on her, this fear she's had for a long time, fear of arrest, for the way she kind of conducts business. It's going to get far too close to comfort for her today. So she's ordered to get dressed and is brought to Barranger. He is sat in what was not long ago her chair, Eleanor's chair, that fucking chair. And there's some other men in the room, a judge, counsel sort of thing. And Barranger, he gets to it immediately, informs her she was followed last night, and the man who followed her sort of recounts what he saw. So yeah, Barranger asks her what went down, and she gives him the truth of it all. And Max is explaining things calmly and reasonably, despite being clearly terrified of him here. But he has blatantly already made his mind up on what he wanted out of this before she walked in the room. He asks why she never told officials, and again, kind of any reason she is trying to give, he isn't listening. And he says his suspicions are now aggravated to an intolerable degree. Woo! So's my patience with you speaking to Max like that, dude. So is my patience with you. He then asks the men in the room if there's enough evidence here for a testimony to amount to treason. And all the men there, they all agree there is. Yeah, Max is scared here. You know, I'm always scared for her here. Even now, knowing what happens, I was scared for her the first time. Yeah, he's really piling the pressure on her here, which is obviously his intention, scare tactics. And yeah, Max pulls her governor get out of jail free card, but Barranger just basically says, he's not here, this is my show now, sort of thing. As I say, yeah, this man, he doesn't even need to be here, but he's just desperate to shut down this pirate resistance, just for revenge and to say that he's the one that did it. And while, yeah, he is absolutely correct in the fact that Max could be giving him some intel, great intel, and she does eventually, which ironically he chooses to ignore. So yeah, again, this whole point, this whole dance, is for kind of nothing anyway. It's just a power play, isn't it? He's not respecting any established setup and system she had with Woods, Rogers and Eleanor. Yeah, is it clear I really don't like this guy? Basically, he sort of says if found guilty of this treason, she's under indictment of penalty of death. Again, we've seen before Max's fears on that in the aftermath of Eleanor's arrest back in late season 2, sort of early season 3. She was very wary of judgment for the games she plays. So yeah, his scare tactics are really working with her here. But this is still Max we're talking about. You know, she's got a lot of resolve, a lot of fight in her. And yeah, Barranger informs her they know the general area of where Silver is hiding out, and that today is the day the pirate resistance dies. And that if she cooperates, her death might still be averted. Yeah, so it's really not a good time for Max. And sort of next with this discussion point with Max, we have a little Featherstone and Adele kind of scene where he's sort of got a good view up top of the office. Now, I guess, yeah, it's Barranger's office. And yeah, Featherstone, he's shitting himself, for want of a better word. And yeah, and he's worried Max is going to be forced to spill the beans on their part just because he can see the kind of pressure she's under. But Adele, she is calm. She is, yeah, this is a really decent little Adele episode. She's not in it a lot, but what she is in, she's vouching for Max. She says she'll keep silent. When he asks how can she be so sure, she says she doesn't like her friends being threatened and she doesn't like to be pushed around. Yeah, I really do like Adele and Max's little friendship they've had since the beginning. So yeah, Adele sort of says, rather than panicking, how can they help? What can they do? And so it's obvious that they, or she, goes to Eleanor first off screen. But a little later on, we get a short scene with Featherstone chatting to Captain Fraser. Clearly a secret meeting, as it's dangerous for both of them to be seen with each other. Yeah, Featherstone is trying to get a bit of leeway for Max, you know, to get him to talk to Barranger. But yeah, it sort of leads to nothing, so I won't go into it anymore. But some other plot stuff has gone down at this point, so when Madi is revealed to Featherstone, he's obviously going to be updated on Silver. But yeah, I don't need to go into that anymore. So we cut back to Max and Barranger. And yeah, the tension is amped up a level. He is right in her face now. He wants names of the people in the resistance. But Max, despite the pressure, despite what's being threatened, bless her, kind of, you can see her kind of breathing and her voice is wavering a little bit. But yeah, despite being terrified, she is keeping her composure. She's keeping her dignity. She's keeping her dignity and her cool. And he hates it. He hates it. He wants her to be crying and crumbling. And yeah, this won't be the only time this episode that these big dog intimidation games just don't work for him. He points out, you know, lives have been lost, and he brings up the raid from the previous night and says a family of 3 was killed, including an 8-year-old girl. Obviously, yeah, we know that's either a flat out lie, because the wife and child were left alive by Flint and everyone, you know, we saw that. So yeah, so B, does that mean that someone from his side, probably not, or even worse, Billy or Billy's side, did they go back in and kill them? You know, there was a moment, wasn't there, where Flint comes out And Billy is a few seconds behind in that scene from yesterday. From last night, from last episode. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure which is the more... Yeah, I can't see why Billy or his side would kill the daughter and the wife, especially when they let Ruth live. So yeah, I think it's leaning more towards A, that he's telling Max, saying to a woman that the death of a child might sway her over, might persuade her. So yeah, maybe that's what's going on there. But yeah, perhaps it's one of those little plot points that will be answered for me later, and I'll feel very stupid for taking a minute out to do this. But right now I can't remember. But I think he's likely lying. But anyway, it doesn't work. So yeah, really frustrated now. Composure and dignity, it just goes out the window for Barranger. Give me the names, he repeats, getting louder and louder and closer to Max each time he says it. But she won't budge. She repeats her reasons why she cannot. She says the same thing sort of over and over, just monotone, and I'm really confident that he's so close to smacking her here. Fear and intimidation and violence, is all this guy clearly understands, and I think Max knows that too. That's why, despite his voice rising and getting right in her face, she is keeping her voice level, nothing confrontational, just give him no excuse, give him nothing. And thankfully, we never have to find out how close this interrogation comes to becoming physical, because Eleanor enters at the right moment. A yay for Eleanor. It has been a bloody while to have a little yay cheer moment for Eleanor, but respect where it is due. Thank you, Eleanor. I bow. So yeah, Max is able to go have a little breather, get her composure back a bit, while Eleanor goes over the arrangement with Barranger. Goes over the arrangement, the deal that they have with Max. And we find out that he's the reason that she's been delayed and not been able to set sail. He needed the men to apprehend Silver. And yeah, Eleanor is going to see a lot of irony in the way Barranger's behaving here to how she did with the Vane execution. How she told herself it was for Woods Rogers' sake that she did it. He's sort of saying the same thing here. Yeah, this is definitely her first sort of, wait a minute, kind of moment here. A bit of a kind of light bulb moment for her here. Max does actually really spell it out for her, though, in this next scene, when they are finally able to talk alone. And yeah, and I can now bring Eleanor into the discussion a bit now, more, as I sort of said. She's really going to see from the other side how frustrating it is when someone is about to do something so foolish because they're in the passion of the moment, because they're doing what they think is right, but what anyone on the outside with a clearer head can clearly see, what he's doing is just lighting a powder keg that's only going to increase their problems. And yeah, Eleanor wearily informs Max, Barranger was in no mood to be reasoned with, so he wants something. She's not completely out of, the red area. And yeah, she asks about the Silver business, and yeah, she gives Max a bit of a bollocking for not keeping her in the loop. But yeah, she's about to find out exactly why Max tried to sort this quickly and quietly without letting Barranger know, without letting her know. And yeah, Max says, I did not fail to do it. I refused to do it and would again. I love the balls of Max. Before I forget, let's get that MVP nomination firework lit up for her for this episode. Just, yeah, really strong Max episode. Talk that sass, Max. Talk that sass. Frustratingly, Eleanor asks, why would she refuse to adhere to the law? And Max says, because the last time the law got its hands on a pirate of that stature, it yielded anger, hostility, resentment, and a resistance that controls most of this island and operates outside of it. And you ask why I chose not to start the cycle all over again. I'm paraphrasing that speech a little bit, but Max, basically, she gives that energy back. Gives Eleanor a bollocking. Your actions are why we are in this mess, lady. Pretty much is what she's doing here. It's probably unfair to give Eleanor solo blame for just how bad things have got. But her refusing to listen to reason, as I say, just like Barranger is now, is a big part of this. And yeah, as again, you can sort of see that kind of moment on Eleanor's face. But yeah, Eleanor deflects the conversation a bit. Yeah, she moans how she's stuck here now until this is fixed. So she asks Max, to give her something that she can take to him. And Max, back-to-back bars from her. She says, you think you can control him. By the time you realise he has been controlling you, it is going to be too late. Is Max talking about Woods Rogers here? Has she realised that at this point as well? Obviously, we as an audience, maybe not associating that quote with him first time, but definitely now can apply him to that statement. I do apply him to that statement much stronger than Barranger, but I'm not certain if that is what Max is mostly hinting to her here at that point. I'm not quite sure who she's most talking about. I think it's probably a 50-50 kind of between them both. But yeah, again, you can definitely apply Woods Rogers into that. And knowing Max, she probably is. So yeah, they're hurried to sort of conclude this meeting when someone comes to report developments. And yeah, and again, Eleanor asks Max to give her something, and you know, she's not the politest about it. I don't think she's too happy with having to hear the consequences of her actions from Max. Yeah, and that's pretty much Max's episode. It's another tough one as a Max fan, but she keeps her cool under pressure, so she really deserves her flowers for that, and for staying loyal to Adele and Featherstone, and obviously anyone else that they've got with that. But yeah, it's a really tough start of the season for Max. Okay, so on to the next scene, and Eleanor joins Barranger in the courtyard sort of area, soon to be hanging square, and is informed the silver capture didn't go to plan, and there is another black spot. Again, this role reversal for her here, seeing it unfold from the other side, watching all the mistakes he's making and being helpless to do anything about it, like Max was with her. There's a few people hanging about the square, just villagers, things like that. And Barranger, he makes a big song and dance about this open challenge. He reads out Silver's call to arms and then openly challenges anyone to take him on. This guy is a twat. He's such a twat. Like, no one is armed. These are just all villagers. Like, what are they going to do? You know, the redcoats outnumber them. They've all got big muskets, big guns. What are they supposed to do in this moment? Of course they're going to go regroup and have a little think about it. And he has the nerve to call them cowards, you know, and he does this big song and dance. Here, I'm unarmed, you know, and he does. It's like, oh, mate, you're doing too much, mate. And yeah, he's just adding fuel to a fire that he thinks he's in control of. And Eleanor, yeah, can do nothing but watch and realise finally what a mess things are in. How standing back and not playing an active part has lost her so much footing on Nassau. So yeah, the next scene with them both, and Eleanor is kind of begging him to reconsider, you know, tells him he's about to make a terrible mistake. This power play just won't work out the way he thinks, and unknown to her, her husband is about to make a very similar mistake. He'll get a bigger prize out of it, but in choosing anger over logic, he still will lose a battle as well, a battle of wits. And Eleanor says a similar thing Max did to him last episode, in that she's not asking him to cancel the hangings, just the spectacle around them. Again, I think talking with Max has put some things into perspective for her, because she points out she knows exactly what he's trying to do. Lure Silver here so he can defeat him in full view of Nassau. Show that he's the big dog, the power here. Don't, she says again, you know, with so much understanding behind it now. At a certain point, there is only so much fear a man can endure. Yep, that's a good quote. Yep, only so far you can push people until they start to push back. And this is a really good quote that ties in with the first Flint and Maddie scene I'm going to go over in a minute. And yet she suggests she has a better way to solve the problem, and she hands him a piece of paper. And Max has given them something, a compromise. No names, but a list of preferred routes used by the resistance to get in and around Nassau. They could cut Silver off before he even gets into town. That's his answer right there. You could have Silver, get him, get it sorted, but Barranger is clearly not convinced. But yeah, at this point, we're unsure what he's going to decide. And that is pretty much Eleanor's episode as well. There's a little moment where she realises a battle is imminent in that big scene. But nothing more to really go on in terms of character. It's a little too late realisation for her in terms of the power Barranger has been given and the damage to the cause he is about to inflict, with, again, so many parallels to what she did with the Vane situation. While it's nice, it's really nice to get this glimpse again of this Eleanor, self-aware, this more logical Eleanor with a bit of fight in her. As I've mentioned before, it only seems to come when she's the one not in control, when she can use kind of hindsight and reason to see how someone else is really messing it up and kind of help out, or in this case, be helpless to help out. But, you know, the moment things are back in her charge, as soon as next episode, I believe, and she just starts missing steps in the thought process, acts hastily. But yeah, already though, without Woodes Rogers around, she's already acting more of her old self, which yeah, I do like, but again, it's short-lived, unfortunately. It is short-lived. But yeah, let's keep that for Eleanor for now, for this ep. Lots to go over with her in the next 3 episodes. But yeah, let's get into what our other characters on the island are up to and bring everyone back together for that final scene. So we get a new Nassau location, a kind of a derelict building of some sort. Of course, Flint, Madi and their guys, you know, they couldn't have gone back to Miranda's, to the HQ. One of Madi's men, whose name I never caught, sort of suggests their only option now is to leave Nassau after last night's mess. But Flint, of course, he shuts that straight down. They came to take Nassau. It's all or nothing, you know, and the same guy points out the slaves will never trust a pirate again after what Billy did. They'll never fight alongside them. And Flint, he doesn't have an answer for that. An obvious, clear issue that's on his mind. Who would trust them after they sort of turned on them like that, after Billy did that? But it's Madi that speaks up, bringing her and Flint closer to the same mind on things this episode. A great episode and scene here that brings them together in trusting each other's passions for this cause. Finally, after a really quite shaky start, sort of bit of untrust both sides to their partnership, she points out Flint's men are still true to their cause and very much part of this resistance, so it still holds. She is firm and she is final with this statement. She speaks like a leader, like the leader she is, whose word is not to be questioned any further, which I think Flint is really impressed with. We know he's not unfamiliar with having to take a tone of finality in a moment of uncertainty, you know, whether he believes that statement to be true or not. We've seen it before from him. So they walk ahead on their own, and it's made clear that she's going to be heading off to try and get a bit of intel. Of course, yeah, they're completely kind of out the loop now, got no idea what's going on. And she thanks him for siding with her, and he points out the main thing now is that they all just stick together. Keep this alliance as one as much as they can, despite what happened. Despite speaking assertively in the moment to her men, alone now with Flint, it's clear to see that Madi, she does have her doubts, you know, on whether they can pull this off. She wonders if anything they do here will matter in London. And then Flint drops a great line, maybe quote of the episode for me. He says, "The Empire survives in part because we believe its survival to be inevitable, but it isn't. And they know that. That is why they're so terrified of you and I." And yeah, that quote obviously applies to their current situation, but I can imply it in part to what choices Barranger and Woodes Rogers are choosing in this episode, and why, and how it shoots them in the foot. It's also another great quote that you can just deepen from real life and kind of go, nope, that's too real. That's too real. I'm not deepening that one anymore. So Flint continues, if they are able to begin a revolt that spreads around the new world, then he imagines people are going to notice. And so with Madi's little moment impressing Flint back there, here we see Madi finally click, oh yeah, this guy's on the level. You know, this guy's for real. At this moment, they still have no idea that Silver's alive, and yet they've still managed to come together as one mind finally here, which is great for this cause, but of course will still cause some conflictions when it comes to Silver a bit further down the line. And yeah, Madi leaves by dropping another great quote. Too much sanity may be madness, and the maddest of all, to see life as it is, not as it should be. And this is Editing Ben's voice over here. Another really interesting thing about this that I literally only just found out just before this is going to, be finalised for the edit. And this quote, she's just said, it's actually from Don Quixote, which is obviously, I think I probably pronounced that wrong. It's the book for Flint. She obviously reads well, and he knows that book. It means a lot to him. It's, to do with Miranda and Thomas, and it goes back to all that sort of stuff. And she obviously doesn't realise that she's saying this very, very meaningful quote to him that he will recognise straight away. So that just adds to this scene so much more in knowing that. So yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that in quick. So it might be a bit messy in the edit, but yeah, had to give that little nod to this scene and to the writers. With this kind of, yeah, if you know, you know, but it's very easy to miss. A bit of a counter challenge to my old favourite quote from Anne, it ain't good, it ain't fair, but it is what it is. Madi sort of challenging that thought here. What if it isn't what it is? What if that's only the case? Because we're just all accepting it, you know, too unsure, afraid to try and change the status quo, which sort of ties in what Eleanor was just trying to warn Barranger about. You can only push people so far until they think, well, what if it doesn't have to be this way? It can't be any worse, so I might as well try something else. Which, of course, that's Flint's whole... That's Flint, that's who he is. So yeah, you know, really bringing those two so much closer in their way of thinking here. And a great bonding scene for them both. And yeah, one of those great scenes that I always forget about until it kind of comes round again. But yeah, if there wasn't such a great kind of hype action scene, this would probably be scene of the episode for me. So yeah, next we get a short little scene where Maddie meets with Emmy, who we remember from way back from season 1, we met her. She's looking for intel, for support, and Emmy points out that people are frightened. Again, calling back to that quote, people are just scared to break the mould, challenge what seems pointless. And yeah, Maddie name drops Flint at some point in the conversation, and Emmy asks about Silver. Oh, you're with him? And Maddie, you know, sadly says he's dead. But Emmy, of course, in the main kind of hub of activity here, she knows otherwise. And she fills Maddie in on Barranger's current plans to arrest him. And Maddie, you know, bless her, she's caught in a wave of emotion, and she has to turn her face away to conceal just a tear of happiness rolling down her cheek. It's a pretty plot-driven scene, that one, pretty short and sweet, but yeah, just a nice little moment for Maddie there in realising he's alive, and it's obviously setting up a bit of confliction that's eventually going to happen, you know, with Silver, and between kind of the three of them, and their conflicting ideas sort of towards the end of the season, towards the end of the show. But let's check in now on the man himself. Let's check in with Silver and with Israel Hands, who it now seems are sort of stuck as a sort of partnership, unwilling or otherwise. Either way, Silver is no longer shackled, as he sort of points out, and sarcastically, Hands asks, you plan to run? Have I mentioned I love this guy? They're sort of trying to scope each other out a bit here, I think, you know, after last night's events. See where they stand. They have each other's curiosities here, I think it's safe to say. They've both kind of impressed each other a little bit. And Hans asks how he would take Nassau. Says when he did it, he drove the governor away, but also he had Teach by his side and an army at his back. And he asks Silver, if he's playing Teach, then who supplies the rest? Ooh, you're about to meet him, mate. You're about to meet him. At this point, Barranger's search party is heard, led by some hounds, and yeah, they reach Hans' base. And again, he's been there a while, I think, so I imagine that's a no-go for him now, and no longer a place he can call home. But him and Silver have managed to get away from the hive and the search party. It's quite unclear how they got away. The way it's shot is a little bit odd, but you can sort of believe he maybe shuffled away a bit and just about had enough time. And we get another great shot of the wrecks in the distance, but we see that 3 redcoats have split from the pack and they've found them. Without Emmy's intel to Maddie, you know, without that meeting happening, I think, yeah, John and Hans, they're dead here. Hans maybe gets a couple of bodies, but he's going to have to fire a shot. That alerts everyone to them. But yeah, Flint, Joji and Dobbs sneak up from behind and they stealth kill the guys. I love that even after being rescued, Hans is still just like, who are you? He's just still so suspicious, just ready to go, you know, and then Silver kind of, chill out. And he says, how are we going to take Nassau? That's how, and points to Flint. And we breathe a sigh of relief. The boys are back together. So Flint fills him in on the Billy situation and what went down there. And Silver is confused on kind of Flint's lack of urgency in the matter. But Flint sort of points out that there's nothing they could do about it at the moment. Bigger fish to fry sort of thing. And yeah, Billy's probably regrouped. He has a lot of control over Nassau. There'll be a time to deal with him, but not right now. Of course, though, we know this Silver doesn't take these sort of things so lightly anymore, especially when Maddie is involved or betrayal. So yeah, he's likely already thinking some things through in terms of Billy, as we're sort of going to see play out in the next episode. And Flint sort of looks back to Hans, who's sort of hanging back wearily. David Wilmot, who plays Hans, does such a great job with this character. A character that's like a real fine line between unintentionally humorous at times and kind of terrifying in his complete unpredictability the rest of the time. Yeah, he does a really great job with that. But Silver vouches for him. And yeah, at this point, Silver spots Maddie and they have a really emotional reunion. They can't hold it back. You know, it clearly means so much to each other at this point. So yeah, Flint's face always gets me here. You know, he's so happy for them, I think. Happy for what they have. But I imagine he can't help but think about Miranda, about Thomas. All he's lost, love he's lost. And maybe concern for his friend here, you know, with knowledge. Things are going to get really tough for them all. Yeah, a lot of contemplation going on his face in those few seconds here, I think. So in the next scene, Emmy is kind of with them now and fills them in on Barranger's kind of open challenge. Again, yeah, real props to Emmy. Her and Adele are worthy of at least a small kind of honourable MVP mention this episode. Maybe I'll put a firework on a combined picture if I have the time, but, you know, they did a good little job. So yeah, Flint sort of gives us the setup for that great hype final showdown. You know, he says everyone's heard now of Long John Silver. They know he's issued the challenge. All that remains for him is to return. So Silver asks Emmy to spread the word. Woo! And yeah, so we get to that final great scene. Of course, scene of the episode for me. Probably for most, I imagine. Fantastic showdown. So as I mentioned, you know, Eleanor realises that Barranger hasn't heard a word she said, or is just not caring to. He's made no attempt to follow Max's routes, despite nagging her to give him something to use, and he's not taking any advice. And he's just whizzing mercilessly through some executions, as men are still dying on the noose. He's literally, right, next lot, you know, he's getting the next lot loaded up. And Eleanor, she knows what's coming. She knows what's coming. It's quiet. There's no one about. So she knows this is going to get bloody. And I think she possibly likely knows that Team Pirate is likely to come out on top. So she sort of organises with Mrs. Hudson for them to be sheltered in the fort with a few escorts. And she asks after Max, but there's no kind of answer as to where Max is. So yeah, that'll be more Max drama to come next episode. And so all that remains. So yeah, she goes off, and so enter Long John Silver riding through a deserted Nassau Square, or a seemingly deserted Nassau Square, on a horse, like a badass. Just so good. Luke Arnold just absolutely dominates that scene, you know, which is really hard to do next to Flint, next to Toby Stephens. But yeah, he just absolutely dominates. Yeah, Flint's by his side. And yeah, people are there, but they're closing their windows, hiding away. But Silver confidently says they'll come. Again, this circles well back to Madi and Flint's conversation. It's a hard thing, you know, for people to challenge the seemingly pointless, the impossible. But on seeing him, on seeing Long John Silver, suddenly this new balance will become an interfactor for them. And yeah, maybe together they could make a change on things. So Barranger and Silver face off for the first time and the last. Absolutely no chance, Barranger. Have an absolute day off, mate. It looks a very uneven fight, though, in Barranger's favour. But there's a whistle and just a goosebumps moment where Maddie heads up the rest of their combined force. Her men and just a load of people from the island. Featherstone is there. Adele is there. Again, badass from her today. She's there on the battle lines. Finally, these two letting their true alliances be known. And it's clear for Barranger to see people are not so cowardly as he thought. They just needed a bit of inspiration and hope, and used their heads and were smart about when they were going to come forward. So yeah, the battle lines and guns are drawn, and the first round is fired. And both sides catch some bodies, and the sword fighting begins. Well, mostly swords. As usual, I'm absolutely terrible at describing action scenes in much detail. Just I avoid it if I can. And he was good, and he went whoa, and I was like whoa. That would be if I tried to. But yeah, it's gripping stuff, and you know, it's pretty even Stevens. And Silver just looks like a force now, like I say. His days of cowering are long gone. And yeah, and the battle's sort of going on, and it's looking like our guys are pretty much winning out. But then a force of armed redcoats appear on the fort walls. And yeah, it looks like things are going to turn in Barranger's favour. But then enter one of the best music cuts from this show. I can't even do it. But yeah, when Billy and his crew, Billy fires that shot and he comes in to help out. See, I'm awful at describing it. I'm just like, and then there was, yeah, I can't do it. But yeah, that moment, you know that moment I'm talking about. Yeah, Billy and his crew come to help out. Thank you, Billy. We're still not good. you and I, we're still not good. But yeah, it makes perfect sense that he'd want to be a part of this combined force. He likely got some intel on Silver's return and what's going down. But it's clear to see, you know, once the smoke's cleared a bit, on the looks exchange between, you know, our guys, that this isn't going to be a Billy's off the hook, we're all friends again moment that it might seem. So yeah, the fighting continues and it's gone back in the favour of our guys. And Israel Hands is sort of watching on from a bit of cover, waiting for his moment to strike. And he sort of sees that Barranger is vulnerable. And so in a badass moment of proportions, he gets down to some hammer time. I've never seen a character before or since wield a hammer as a main weapon, but it's just so epic. It's so epic. And he easily takes out a couple of reds and he makes a beeline for Barranger. And I think he attacks his leg first so he can't stand. And then he switches to his knife, you know, at his throat. He looks set to end this once and for all. But what does he do first? He looks to Silver for permission. Ooh, interesting. As Madi and Flint's unity grew stronger, it's important to note that so has Hands and Silver's. On Hands' part especially here, he's literally looking to Silver for permission, looking to who he's sort of saying is his teach now. And yet Barranger's throat is sliced and the locket falls from his hands. Perhaps he grabbed it once he knew he was a dead man, but a bit weird that it would be there in his hand during an intense fight like this, but I'll let it go. Again, this humanising of this monster, it doesn't work for me, I'm afraid. It doesn't work. But either way, it's bye-bye Barranger. Won't miss you, but thank you for a great performance. Chris Larkin, is it Chris Larkin? Great performance and a great little villain that wasn't around for too long. And it's back-to-back MVP nominations for Israel Hands for some more badass battle action. Yeah, absolutely outstanding scene. Maybe I should have done this the other way round and ended this episode on a hype rather than the teach stuff. But there we are. There we are. We haven't done it, so I'm going to end you all on a misery. But it's not. Hopefully the way I've worded it all and that would be like, you take some positivity from what's to come next. A little bit. Okay, so let's quickly start and go over those Woods Rogers and Barranger flashback scenes. Just us as an audience getting a real glimpse of what these combined minds are capable of and getting some good Woods Rogers backstory and a possible reason for how this darkness began, where it really started. So Barranger sort of asks about Eleanor, if she has any ideas what lies ahead. And she has no clue. She has no clue her husband has this darker side to him. Again, it's just more really disturbing lack of emotion from Woods Rogers. You know, I think I'm yet to credit Luke Rogers on his portrayal of this complex character. This episode especially, he must have had to go to some dark places to prepare for something like this. And yeah, he does a phenomenal job. And Barranger says, when the dread moment arrives, your true nature will assert itself. Oh, you can say that again. You can say that again. And I can go back to him looking back at his own book last episode, you know, knowing this is what he's setting up, what he's planned here. And yet it's revealed that Barranger has given him some of his own men to use, some good men he says to use. But he says there's not a good man among them. Not anymore. Maybe once, possibly one day again, but not right now. Good men are not what the moment requires right now. The time calls for dark men to do dark things. And then just before the kill hauling begins, we get that second flashback scene where we learn more of his backstory and we come back to that kind of Spanish galleon he mentioned to Eleanor last season and how taking it killed his brother, got him a scar. But of course, he left out so much more, as he did in the book. Despite surrendering for whatever reason, one of the Spanish men took a cheap shot, set off a cannon, I think he says, and it scarred him and it killed his brother. So yeah, we understand a little bit more, understand how emotional that would have been for him, how awful that would have been for him. That is truly awful, and it is an act of awful cowardice that deserved punishment. You know, it's clear they were close. Woods Rogers speaks really fondly of him here. Had he said that I killed the man who fired that shot, I took my time with it on that guy, I would have probably answered, fair, that's fair. But no, he didn't just do that. Was this darkness always there in him, or did this act unlocks something for the first time. You know, I'm not sure if we'll ever know. I think that you've got to have something in there to be able to do this. So yeah, he coldly describes how he started with the captain. Says it was slow, more deliberate with him. Then one by one, he killed everyone, leaving only one man alive to tell the tale. Now, I have always misunderstood this until now. I've really got the wrong end of the stick with this. I always thought it was Teach who was the man he left alive, and he regrets it because Teach leveled up and became the pirate, you know, that he is now. But no, of course it's not. Why would Teach be on a Spanish galleon, Ben? But, you know, I don't know. I think it's the way that it's shot, and it's kind of heavily focused on Teach, that kind of led me to that conclusion in the past. It is a little bit confusing the way this is shot. And Woodes Rogers finishes by saying, my instinct now is the same as it was then. And yeah, again, another reason I think this confused me. Hearing the word again and then a close-up of Teach, I sort of put the two events together. But no, it's the show, you know, it's the show and Woodes Rogers making it clear to the audience and to Barranger that Teach is a dead man here. Teach is a dead man, whatever happens, and if it all goes to plan, they all are. All the Revenge crew are. But yeah, safe to say the monster has let himself out of the cage. But I'll come back to Woodes Rogers. Let's get our trio sort of set up, which is just so bittersweet because it's such a great scene with Jack and Teach. But, well, let's get into it. Let's get into it from the beginning. So yeah, before I mostly get into those intense scenes, I got to give this new director a pat on the back on behalf of us Anne stans. Raoul Rainey was like, I got you guys. I got you. Because this episode has like 4 of my favourite Anne shots. Just casually, for no kind of real reason. She has some little things to go over, but she's not kind of dominating this episode, but just casually 4 amazing shots. First we get this absolutely epic shot where the cameraman must have been in Clara Paget's hair on the shout of action, and we sort of see her walk forward, you know, up the steps, looking majestic as all hell, looking badass. And then we see them rowing on the ship. That great shot on my mug, this one of my favourite stills, probably can't see it with the green screen. And in deep contemplation, and then another great shot where she kind of stands on the side of the ship, and she kind of walks along it, kind of surveying, and then she sort of does a similar thing when she gets down on the deck and sort of observes there as well, and you get a great kind of still from her there. Yeah, bloody hell, you know, great, fantastic and shots here. Yeah, thank you, Raoul Rain, you got the vision. Appreciated, mate, appreciated. But anyway, so yeah, we get that great Anne shot like I described, and she walks up on deck to join Teach and Jack, who are observing Woodes Rogers' ship from afar. You know, they've obviously been following its movements. And yeah, and so it's great to see this new dynamic with Teach and Jack, and I'm so sad we get so little of it. Jack has that respect now from Teach. He's no longer getting dismissed or side-eyed. Well, he gets side-eyed a little bit here, but not in the disrespectful way it was kind of happening before. And it's Anne's turn to give him a couple of side eyes this episode. And Anne asks kind of anyone really, any of them both, if there's any chance he'll slip away from them. And Jack and Teach just answer as one kind of unison, no. Yeah, and I think Anne is a little bit stunned, you know, kind of, huh? Just as we are in this kind of quick turnaround from Teach. And yeah, Teach kind of goes over the plan, and once finished, as he's leaving, he sort of asks Jack, have you ever captained a ship of this size before? God, no. Jack answers, and Teach sort of stops halfway down the stairs, like that wasn't the answer I wanted, mate, you know, and he repeats it. He doesn't like problems, this guy. He's not one to mull over a situation. He just wants quick solutions. So yeah, he just repeats the question again. This time he's wanting at least more confidence and at least a lie. To which Jack gives, sure. And then Teach says, good. Yeah, great little moment with those guys. Teach goes off to do some other things. And yeah, Jack is just staring at him, admiring. He's not present in this moment with Anne at all, which I don't love. I love Jack, obviously, you know that, but he's been dismissive like this before, you know, when he's been distracted with Anne. I do love this arrogance he has because it's often funny and it is a part of him, but sometimes it ventures into kind of rude and dismissive, you know, especially when Anne is concerned and she's trying to be realistic, and talk really quite seriously to him here. And yeah, with Anne, you know, despite this positive turnaround they're on, she knows ultimately this is a game they don't win long term. Knows it's a game that Jack struggles to kind of shut down, I think, to give up on. She's ready to, I think. Not piracy, full stop, but I think she clearly just wants a quieter life with just her and Jack, just doing their own little thing, but not caught up in all this other mess anymore. And he sort of irritates me a little bit further in this moment by admiring Teach and saying, you know, he was ready to go all guns blazing for Eleanor until I talked him out of it. Yeah, that did happen, but I think you're failing to credit the actual person standing in front of you who snapped, you know, you out of it in the first place. But he says, if the story of Jack Rackham is to end with him standing alongside Blackbeard as an equal, that is an ending I can live with. Yeah, you know, he's back to his legacy and his name and being a bit blinded and unrealistic about that. Interesting to note, I think, that this is the first and only time Teach has been referred to as Blackbeard by any of our guys, any of our characters. I mean, I know the name's been teased very early in that first episode, but obviously that was something else. Humble beginnings and all that. So yeah, Jack is back a little bit in his legacy-making era. Maybe a little bit guilty of not thinking of bigger pictures and thinking he's capable of more. Again, maybe I can bring this back to all what Maddie was saying, you know, about the inevitable and things like that. So yeah, he's thinking, you know, yeah, his legacy, it might be something he'll have to share the spotlight with Teach on. But again, I think he's being a little bit dismissive to the person he really should be taking into account and sharing it with. Does real Jack Rackham's name hold up next to Teach? I don't know. You know, homework for the group. Let's ask your non-pirate friend how many pirates they can name and see if Calico Jack is mentioned before Teach, before Blackbeard, or even before Anne and Mary, you know. I don't know. Anyway, that's a tangent. Still love you, Jack. I still love you. You're just being a bit of an ignorant arse here. You're just being a bit of an ignorant arse. But yeah, Anne looks to him and sort of asks, defeat Woods Rogers and we walk away. And he smiles and he sort of gives a small kind of nod, which doesn't really give one answer or the other. And yeah, had it not gone down the way it does, this might have been an interesting, concerning kind of plot to explore with my favourite little duo. But of course, it's a moot point because it doesn't go that way. And I've been stalling, so yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, the Vanguard with Teach and Anne, they row over. Already mentioned, damn Anne, you know, great shot. And so we have my biggest moan from the episode. Teach isn't falling for this trap. This Teach on this show isn't falling for this trap, which is ironic because real Teach, this is how he was killed, by a trap like this, by people, you know, men hiding below deck and just coming up and being like, ah! But the way this show's panned out and the way it's played and the way these characters are and the way they built this Teach up and Jack and Anne as well, he's just not falling for this for me. It's so obvious. Like, it's so obvious there are more men in the hold. Like, he knows Wood Rogers there and he's not out on... Yeah. Add the fact also, you know, that the men on deck who do succumb to cannon fire from their ship, from the Revenge, are basically there on a death mission then. So, you know, because they'll know they're no match for the Revenge. We see the difference in the size. They would have known that going into this plan. So some guys, some of these dark men were like, yeah, I volunteered to go out and on deck to die. And the guy that smiles knowingly when Teach kind of finishes him off. There's dark and then there's kind of dumb. I don't know. I won't dwell on it all, but I don't know. This is all for Black Sails and the established characters we have. Yeah, it's a bit of a messy and unbelievable A to get us to B. Not the best the show's done for me. But yeah, maybe I've missed something. But yeah, it's a little bit sloppy for me for the show. Yeah, something just doesn't hit. But nevertheless, despite clear suspicion on their faces, Teach and Anne have no time to react because Woods Rogers and a band of men come charging out from below deck and the ambush is set. They put up a good fight. Again, useless at it. Useless at describing it. And they both catch a couple of bodies. This one's quite hard to follow, even if I could describe it. Really hard to kind of follow the full sequence of events here. Everything happens quite fast. Again, I don't love how this all happens. Anne loses her hat at some point, so I should have known there that it was only downhill from then on. They're far too outnumbered, and Anne is flawed, and I hate it. And she finds herself in a very similar situation Jack was in his fight a couple of episodes ago, and she has to use a pistol. I think that's the first time we've seen Anne use a pistol. And Teach catches a nasty slash when he goes one-on-one with Woods Rogers. And so in losing his momentum, he has to surrender to a bunch of guns in his face, including Woods Rogers. And Jack, obviously on the revenge, with worried defeat on his face, that realism now that this isn't going to go the way he thought, he raises the white flag, and he's about to really understand what Woods Rogers was talking about in that carriage. When he spoke about the stuff he left out, the stuff that if it got around civilized society, he might stop getting invited to dinner parties. I think underestimating Woods Rogers is the main point here for our characters, for us as first-time audience members, that he's capable of this kind of cold, unjust punishment. Unjust for a civilized man, I mean. Obviously, between this point is where we get that flashback scene and setup that sort of I've already discussed. So the Revenge crew, Jack and Anne, Teach, are all on deck now and chained, and we don't know what's going to happen, but after that Woods Rogers scene, and with Teach being singled out, it's quite obvious to us and to Teach, he's a dead man. Maybe they all are. This has got a very eerie, quiet feel that just builds up the tension. Something awful is about to go down. Woods Rogers leans into Teach, who is now on the deck, and this lean is a little moment to remember for that final episode. Jack doesn't forget. But as scary and foreboding as Woods Rogers looks here, of course, any fear of death Teach may have, he'll never show him. He's already a man with not long left, remember. So he gives him a little smile of defiance before a black hood is placed over his head. Teach is not going to give him anything. In fact, he's going to take away so much. And so the keel hauling, it begins. It's not much to say on the act. It's awful, isn't it, really? Like the sounds, the visuals. I wasn't sure on what I was seeing sort of on first watch. I didn't understand what was going on. Again, the camera angles and perspective used in these kind of scenes here are a little confusing the first time. But he starts on one side, goes into the water, dragged along, and he kind of comes up the other. It's brutal, it's tense, it's graphic, it's long. Like, all three dunks are long. I know a lot of people struggle with it. I've seen kind of reactors and read about things. And while it maybe lingers on a bit longer than you'd expect or maybe want, I think it's needed to finally show Woods Rogers for what he's capable of, for what's been there since the first time we saw him, and he came across, as a really quite likeable, reasonable guy that could be a good kind of, end up being something useful in this partnership, but no, that's not who he is. This is to show he is just a pirate by another name. He is really no better at the end of the day. I could understand and even give him a bit of a pass in not wanting an official trial for Teach after that Redcoat's body display. Again, like with his brother, I could have given him a pass. It's not the noblest thing ever, but you could forgive it in the passion of a moment. Just as I could forgive if he went, you know what, I can't be arsed with your trial, you're a pain up the arse, Teach. Bang. Obviously would hate it, but I could understand it from his perspective. But this just proves to me that he is a monster. This is Ned Lowe stuff. Like, this isn't justice. This is cruelty, a brutality. As a governor and a captain, he should not be engaging in. Was this a surprise for you? Or, like me, had you been a little bit wary of him for a while now, especially those first two episodes from this season? I've seen and read pretty mixed reactions. Some had him down from a wrong 'un from the very early. They weren't shocked by this turn. Whereas a few reactors I've seen were still hopeful that some middle ground might be found with him, and he's not as bad as he's seeming, and was shocked in terms of Woods Rogers when this scene happens. And quite shocking to me, though of course each to their own, this guy still has his defenders. Like people who've seen to the end, who not just like most of us agree he's a great character, but aren't keen on him because of, well, the hypocrisy and all the rest of it. No, there's literally people that are like, Eleanor drove him to this. Eleanor's the one who manipulated him. He's just trying to do the right thing. He's no worse than the pirates we cheer for. But yeah, that's a flat out. Did we even watch the same show? That's mental. You know, Eleanor doesn't help some things, absolutely. But this was clearly in his locker. This was in his MO long before he met her, my dudes. Like, yeah. Damn, he literally tells us so himself. Anyway, another tangent, but each their own. If there are Woodes Rogers fans among you, I'm all to you. All power to you. But, damn. I'm scared of you. So yeah, the first time Teacher's put through this awful ordeal and he comes back up, you know, the barnacles and scraping has obviously done some damage. He's lost some of his clothes and he's got some cuts. But he sort of kneels and he coughs and he splutters a little bit. And Woodes Rogers sort of looks at him a moment and he says calmly, again, sort of gets a small reaction from Jack, and Woodes Rogers just stares at him. Yeah, a look that just makes my blood run cold every time. That, I told you, didn't I? That's what that look is. As we'll soon see, it's also a you're next sort of look. And so, yeah, we go through it all again. I love that Anne has a little check-in on Jack a couple of times during all this. Obviously, after all they've talked about last couple of episodes, and just to discuss that first scene with them. This is obviously going to be really tough for him to watch his mentor go through after all they've achieved. And yeah, Woodes Rogers continues to stare at Jack as it happens, and Teach's seemingly lifeless body is brought back up a second time, looking even more worse for wear. I know the images are quite graphic, so I'm deliberately not showing them for very long, as I know, you know, a lot of people struggle to look at them. And then Woodes Rogers points to Jack and says him next. So I come to my other small niggle. Anne doesn't react nearly enough for me here. Anne, who we know and establish would take on an army for Jack, lie down in front of a carriage just to slow it down for a moment. I get it all happens so fast and the writers have to be careful, because have her react too mental, you know, start kicking out, swearing, start trying to fight, and Woodes Rogers just shoots her, because why wouldn't he? But just give me just a little small moment of her really raging and Woodes Rogers maybe making the threat, or Jack having to say something to soothe her. Just a few seconds before that reveal that Teach is still alive. You know, I just needed a little something in there, because this is just a little bit of too soft a reaction of Anne for me. But yeah, it's a small moan. It's, you know, ultimately not important. But it does bother me just a little bit every time. But indeed, it doesn't matter, because Teach still has some fight left in him, and he shows he's still alive and he's not going down easily. And most importantly, he is saving Jack in this moment, possibly the whole crew, and he is making Woodes Rogers look like a fool. He knows he's a dead man now. I mean, he knew it from the go. So he finds that fight, that last bit of fight, to try and sit up, you know, right at the perfect moment, likely knowing full well he's going to have to go through that awful ordeal once more. But yeah, again, possibly knowing he saves Jack in this moment. And so again, Woodes Rogers orders, but this time it is with clear frustration. Clear frustration. And yeah, this isn't the humiliation party you were expecting, mate. And he is furious when he exchanges a look with Jack again. You know, but Jack is returned to Anne's side, and there's just an anticipation in the air now. Teach's bravery, his fight, it's unlocked something on both sides. You know, he comes back up once more, and yeah, again, I won't describe it. It's really tough to look at. And when his body just kind of slumps like a bag of cement on the deck, it looks like that's it. But he spits out some loose, well, skin, teeth, bit of everything, and he tries to rise again. Just the pain this man must be in, the absolute pain. But he is still trying to rise, and the whole ship is just stunned in silence. Both sets of crew just absolutely silent, craning to get a look at this defiance, this bravery, this moment that will be told forever. And then just to cap it off all so sweetly, knowing his opponent has absolutely messed up royally in this, underestimated his resolve completely, and should have just killed him straight away. Teach looks to Woodes Rogers, and despite all he's been through, Edward Teach gives him a smile. That's why, as hard as all this is to watch, as long as that kind of 8 or so minutes seems to go on for. That's why this payoff is so good. Fuck Woodes Rogers. Fuck Woodes Rogers. we saw Woodes Rogers' true face finally, but he has got egg all over it in this moment. The plan was clearly to put all the Revenge crew through this ordeal, or at least a lot of them, at least Jack, probably Anne, to make a point, as discussed earlier in his story, in the earlier scene, but he absolutely cannot do that now. Teach's bravery and strength has just put a fire in the Revenge crew, put doubt in his crew, and that smile from Teach is why Woodes Rogers cannot order the again. What if he survived a 4th time? What if he doesn't die a 4th time? And so he does not take the chance. Again, he thought this was a power move, and it's been absolutely uno reverse by Teach. Of course it's an MVP nomination. Of course you won't need to stick around for the winner's reveal if you really don't want to. It's a clear one. But yeah, so Woodes Rogers pulls the trigger, and that's goodbye to just a great character. The legendary Blackbeard, Edward Teach, brought to life by the fantastic, late, great Ray Stevenson. Let's raise a glass to both character and actor. Absolutely brilliant. I said it when the character was introduced. Everyone has heard of Blackbeard the pirate, and the creators and Ray did a great job in giving this character life, fierceness, warmth, ruthlessness, loyalty and legacy, love. But of course, Jack and Anne are still very much prisoners on this ship, and yeah, no impassions are stirred from such bravery. Woodes Rogers' new plan is to hand them over as prisoners rather than kill them. Yeah, really tough, 7, 8 or so minutes, like I say. But if you are going to lose such great character like Teach and finally expose the true face of Woodes Rogers, then yeah, this is the way you want to do it. And yet again, like I say, like I mentioned, interesting to note, despite me moaning about it a bit in the show, the real Teach, was ambushed in this way, and he eventually supposedly succumbed to many sword wounds and 5 gunshots during the same fight. And as legends and stories sort of started to circulate, a kind of popular one was his body kind of, because obviously his head was cut off, as it is here in the show. The wives' tale story was that his body kind of circled the ship 3 times before it finally sank. So yeah, despite that tactic, again, not correlating so well with the in-show Teach for me, they've actually tied it in quite well to real legend, and adding the keel hauling, needing 3 attempts, like with the body. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so yeah, the rest of the Revenge crew are ordered to be loaded below deck. And of course, yeah, there'll be lots for Jack to ponder and come to understand, I think, from where Anne was coming from earlier. But they have a big predicament of their own to get out of first. So we will catch up with them next episode with that one. But yeah, again, maybe I shouldn't have ended on the brutal of Teach, but I do think there is something positive to take from it. But yeah, that's the episode. Let's, I say let's do the MVP. Let's quickly spend 10 seconds sorting out the MVP.
Last item.
Yeah, well, obviously, this one goes to Edward Teach. Ray Stevenson, I won't go all over it again. That takes him up to 2, which sadly will be his cap now. But considering he's only in 11 episodes, and apart from maybe 6-ish bigger episodes, he is used quite sparingly. So I think that's pretty good innings, really. He's very much an impact character. So, 2 wins, I think, is really solid going for Edward Teach. Time to wrap this up, like I'm not dying to just get straight into the next episode or anything. Hold on to your hats, Sam fans. We've got a big one coming up. But yeah, either way, I will say goodbye. Enjoy the nice weather if you're in the UK. It's actually quite nice right now. But otherwise, I'll see you guys for episode 4 very soon. Peace out.